Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm EJ Hilbert, and this is part 3 of Practical CCPA. Yes, I'm being cheesy. And yes, I'm going to do a different approach to the last two. Less PowerPoint, more discussion. Well, not really discussion because you guys aren't going to call in or talk to me, but maybe somebody actually will send me a message. There's been about 300 people that have actually viewed the last two of these videos. The first one was an overview. The second one was around data management, and this one is about vendor management. And we're going to use the old school whiteboard with information on it. This way, and I see there's a little reflection of the outside window, so let me pick it up a little higher, move it over here, see it? Okay, so everybody can see it. All right. Vendor management really only has two parts, folks. You can see it on the screen here. You can see what I'm showing you. Vendor management has to do with whether or not somebody's a service provider or whether or not they are a third party. Okay, I'll put that off to the side for a second, bring it back in. Under CCPA, they break your vendors. Those are individuals that you share data with into two separate categories. They are either a service provider. A service provider is somebody who you share the data with in order to do a contracted work with them. That company does not have the right to use the data for anything else. Okay, so when a CCPA request does come into you, you can in turn go to them and get them to extract the data and follow everything up from that perspective. All right. That's a service provider. A third party is a provider who you utilize to do a contracted piece of work. You will give them data, you'll ask them to do a piece of work for them, and so on. But they also have the right to use the data however they choose. I'll give you a perfect example people don't realize. Those people who use Adobe Creative Cloud. If you actually go into the contract, the information that you agree to by checking that little box and saying, yes, I agree to this when I sign on, and yes, I actually do read some of those, it actually states that if you are to utilize that service and to upload that information into the cloud, then Adobe has the right to use that information however they choose. They now own the data. They are a third party. Okay. And under CCPA, you have to declare all of your third parties. You have to declare all of the various different companies that you have shared the data with. The reason for this is fairly simple. If they are a service provider, you do not have to tell a consumer that you gave the information to them because you are required to go to that service provider and get that information back when a CCPA request comes in. And in some cases, if in fact you have to do the deletion, then that information, you will go to the service provider, you will ask them for the information. In the case of a third party, you will give the consumer the name of the third party, and the consumer will have to go to that third party themselves and ask for the information. So you have to know who you've been sharing the data with. You have to know whether or not they have the right to use that data. And the element that comes into play is technically, if you are giving the data to a third party and you are receiving anything of benefit in exchange for that data, a lower rate, access to analytical data, anything that the company benefits, not just cash, but anything that is, let's call it a profit, all right? Then you sell data. This is very, very important. If you use a third party and give them data and they give you a discounted rate or variation therein, you sell data and you have to declare that. Okay? Something to consider as you are looking at your vendor management piece, and I'm going to wrap this up fairly quickly. You have to review your contracts. Now, there's vendor management about security and everything of that nature that goes into the reasonable security element and talks about how you have to check with your vendors and make sure they're actually protecting the data the same way. What we're talking about here is strictly whether or not that data is used or owned. All right. Do you know what you're sharing? Do you know how they are using it? Do you know if it invokes the we sell data mark? Okay. What I recommend to all of my clients and all of our clients is that once you've reviewed those contracts, you add a data protection addendum. All right. And I'm not talking about the data protection addendum that you got from a vendor that you're working with or that you're supplying services to. That one usually says that you have to protect the data this way or that way, that you've undergone a cybersecurity assessment, something of that nature. The data protection addendum that I'm talking about is you lay out very clearly whether or not they're a third party or whether or not they're a service provider. Remember, a service provider means that when you send a note to them, they have to comply and do what you ask them to do. And I'm sorry, I'm looking right above the camera, and so I can see myself. That's why it doesn't look like I'm staring right at you. Back to what I was saying. The service provider will enter into a contract that says that they agree to do what you're asking them to do. In other words, they agree to give you back the data that you're asking for when a CCPA request comes in. On the same note, if they are declaring themselves as a third party, they are agreeing to acknowledge that they may receive CCPA requests from your clients because you are going to direct them to them. So back to our wonderful little thing here. We'll go through it nice and quickly. All right. I hope everybody can see that. I can't see if it's completely on the screen, but there you go. All right. Are you a service provider? Are you a third party? Did you review your vendor contracts? Consider putting a DPA in, a data protection addendum in. And our next conversation is going to be about, do you sell? And we've already hit on the key element of that. And that is, if you share the data for any element of profit, then you sell. Okay. Thank you for tuning in. This was a nice and short one. It's great for a Friday afternoon. If you've got questions, hit me up. Look, I even made funky little, yes, this is my handwriting. Look, funky little images over here. Can't use the data if it's a third party. They do get data use if it's a third party. Remember that. All right. Thank you very much. And hopefully you'll watch the next one after this. Have a wonderful weekend and stay healthy out there.